Hi, I'm Kevin,
And I'm Amanda.
and we are serving up.
All that jam. A lighthearted look at the weekend jam bands.
Where we break down the jam scene's biggest stories,
Talk new bands.
upcoming tours,
And show reviews. A little laughing, some hot takes, and an always positive message for the community.
Week of December 18th, 2023, Steven Bernstein.
Welcome back to the most festive episode of the year. As we unwrap the holiday season, the vibe is reflection, celebration, and a bit of holiday hustle. So get ready for the coolest sleigh ride in town as we unwrap the top 3 stories. We have an audience participation coming up later. Stay tuned for that. And our look back interview with Steven Bernstein about Millennial Territory Orchestra playing the slide trumpet, that New York flavor, plus lessons from the road with Little Feat. So settle in and let the warmth of the season begin. How are you, Amanda?
Hi, Kevin. I am good. I am just about all recovered and rejuvenated after my trip down to Mexico last week. So happy to be back and really excited to end this year and super stoked for next year, too.
You needed a vacation from vacation.
Yeah, I pretty much got one.
There you go. I got to see Karina Reichman on Thursday night, and really good show. Opening band, Coyote Island, though, I was like, wow, it had this Middle Eastern reggae dub kind of vibe to it. And so, of course, I ran up to the guitar player afterwards. Hopefully, sometime soon they'll come on. But Karina, her album is fantastic. The band's in fine form. The crowd was a little light, but it was a Thursday night, but I felt like she should have packed the place.
Yeah.
But 2 months ago, she was in Baltimore. So she's been touring heavy. And, have you ever noticed with bands, like there used to be this guy, Gibdrol, and he had a solo band, and he came through Baltimore all the time. And over like 2-year period, it was like 300 people, then it was 250. And I was always like, is it because every 3 months he shows up?
Yeah. Oversaturation. I mean, yes, absolutely. And I remember Gibdrol too. Gosh, I haven't thought of that in a while. I think maybe depending on the exact market or location and the artist, I've definitely seen that happen. I know that for quite a long time, Railroad Earth didn't play in New Jersey or New York. They kind of just had to leave it be for a while because they had played so many shows in different configurations there over, a decade. And of course, certain people were not happy about that, but it was the right thing to do. So I think planning tours, that's another layer, right? You kind of have to think about.
Right. And it's a model that when I was maybe 15, Yes and Rush both toured at the same time. And I got to see them both at the Capitol Center like 3 nights apart. Then 4 months later, they played Baltimore like 4 nights apart. And we were calling it the Rush Yes Mega Tour. But that was a model back then that they used. And a lot of times I feel like back then the first show they did was at the smaller of 2 venues. And then as the album got bigger, they came back through 4 months later and they could sell out the one that had an extra 3,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that works just because albums don't.
It's different. I mean, even the way, as we know, that albums are being released nowadays, in bits and pieces, singles, everything about that and the promotion, I think, is so different. Plus, we can listen to so much more anytime we want. I mean, I know that feeling of even when I was in high school, a band would come to town that I loved. Maybe I had a couple of their live shows or something. I'm thinking MMW, Carl Denson, those were some favorites that didn't come around as often. I mean, I would do anything to go to those shows because I needed to hear it. I think it's just a little bit of a challenge now to figure out where to go and how far apart to spread those performances.
There you go. All right, you have a few interesting stories there. If you all don't know, I get a sneak peek, so I'm not completely caught off guard there. But I want to talk about that. So why don't we jump into
the top 3 stories of the week?
All right. right, Kevin. Yes. So, three great stories. I'm going to start with one that truly is a celebration, just because this is such a positive, I think, positive statement on the music industry over time. The Meters celebrating the 50th anniversary of Rejuvenation. So, first of all, 50 years. I honestly couldn't even believe that. But there's a huge celebration being planned. Dumpsta Funk is leading the charge on this. There's going to be a celebration of the Meters, George Porter Jr., Cyril Neville, many, many others. That's slated to take place on May 2nd at the Civic Center. Oh, sorry, to take place on May 2nd at the Civic Theater in New Orleans. Pretty iconic venue. And for a milestone moment like this, commemorating what we all kind of understand to be a seminal album, it's really maintained its presence over the years, I think. So let's just stop there. First of all, Kevin, 50 years. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy. That album is, I think, what spawned them touring with the Rolling Stones, because Mick Jagger loved it so much. So it's mind-boggling that the Rolling Stones just released a song on a side note. But yeah, I mean, that's crazy. And the thing was, this was like the reinvention of the Meters, was that album. Cabbage Alley before it was the first time Cyril, I think, did vocals, but the albums before that were all the instrumental stuff. So this was their, I think, attempt to break into a wider audience, and they found a slightly wider one, but it never quite. It was like, if you were a musician, you knew about it, but if you were, the regular guy listening to Hits 103,
Maybe not so much, but you're right. So yeah, that was their fifth studio album, and absolutely the first one that, like you were saying, really featured mostly songs that included vocals, different types of arrangements. I think that in terms of the production of it, well, we all know the reception was very positive within the music scene, but you can kind of see over time the influence that that album has had. How many artists have done their own renditions of its songs? Red Hot Chili Peppers did
I've
Africa.
always had. Where are you with that?
Me?
With them doing Hollywood instead of Africa, I always found that a little strange.
I think that that's horrible, but I don't really find it to be anything that should have happened. I get maybe why they thought that's something that, they also changed Motherland to Brotherland. So if you're gonna pay homage to a song, I think there's ways to do it. I'm not sure that's the way I would have done it.
That's when you do the instrumental.
Right. Yeah. Like, don't even worry about it. Right. It's just as good that way. Public Enemy. This is one of my favorites too. There was a sample of Just Kiss My Baby on Time Bomb. If you kind of think about the influence, the Dead performed Hey Pocky Way among so many other bands, String Cheese. And I think it's easy sometimes to kind of put that album itself on a shelf and not think about it in terms of all of that kind of coverage that it got from artists who clearly loved it. So, so much more we could say about it. Tickets are on sale now for this event. And I know that there are going to be many, many other artists announced as we get a little bit closer. So something just really positive. And if there's any band or album deserving of a big party, I think this is definitely it.
Jump in now.
That's right. Yeah. So, and that'll be, right around Jazz Fest time. So I'm sure that there will be an incredible reception for that one. All right. Let's see what we got here. Oh, yes. So Limewire. Kevin, you remember Limewire?
Oh, I remember Limewire.
Who doesn't remember Limewire? Well, they're still around. And I'll be honest, I had not thought about Limewire in a very long time. Limewire, along with Napster, of course, really turned a lot of things around for the music industry with that free peer-to-peer music sharing. I mean, I loved it. I used all of those, like so many of us did. Well, they're back. I guess they never really went away, but they're back with something new, AI Music Studio. And I checked this out. So let me talk a little bit about what this is. So Limewire has a new website, but it still has the same logo. So you might get a little burst of, memory when you're looking at it. you can enter this AI studio and generate images and audio. But this audio function is the first one I've seen or maybe tried that works the same way as creating images. So you put in a description of what you're looking for. And this can be something you can do with the free version. I think you're just limited to a certain number of kind of audio clips per day. I don't know if you can really download them, but you could definitely go on there and try it. We know that this has been the center of so much controversy, and so it felt weird even to go on there and try it. But I have to say, I can see where this could really catch on, and that was scary to me because about 30 minutes into playing around, I had almost forgotten what all the fuss was about because it's very easy to use. So I think I put a song in the style of Long Distance Love Affair in the style of Prince. I wanted to just see what it would do. So it gave me an instrumental 30-second, nothing that really sounded like Prince, named it for me. Pretty cool riff, if you want to think of it that way. But I could see this really catching on because it is super easy to use.
So is this going to be a tool to help write songs?
I don't know about that. And maybe that's why I'm having less of an issue with this. Now, I don't know what the paid version will do. So there could be a lot of other features that I just didn't get a chance to check. So this is obviously a work in progress, and the quality of the results is usually connected very closely to how specific you are with the prompt. So for instance, there are some limitations. You can't generate, a McDonald's commercial written by, Aerosmith or something, but you can put in an artist's name and ask for some guitar riffs or, drums or beats. So,
in the style of kind of?
In the style of, yeah. And I really am going to sit with this for a while because I'm curious how much it knows about various artists. So we know that
you think you could get away with hamburger commercial in the style of Aerosmith?
It's possible, right? And I guess that's similar to I think that's similar to the image creators. When you really get into those and you start seeing the incredible differences you can get from just changing one word or adding something, I think that's where the lore of this tends to be just from a psychological level. It's like a game, right? You almost want to see what's going to happen next when you just tweak something a little bit. So this, of course, it's still really early, but I could imagine that even in the next few months, something like this could be much more widely used than maybe some of the other AI music generators that we've seen. And I think there's probably a lot of uses for it for people that maybe wouldn't be making their own music anyway or paying others to do it. That's kind of where I see some of this fitting in.
Mm-hmm. Commercials.
Yeah. So I'm not fully supportive, but I have to say I can see where this is going to be very enticing and honestly kind of fun. And that's probably the scariest thing because people are going to want to use it and they're going to be trying it out. So if the clips stay at 30 seconds, I don't really think that poses much of a threat to anyone, but I have a feeling when you pay, you could probably do a lot more with it. So we'll see what happens there. And maybe that's a good roll right into the last story of this week, which is really just an article that I found on Variety. It was the live music business outlook for this upcoming year for 24. And the theme, Kevin, if I were to try to summarize the storyline, is that next year has a very tough act to follow because 2023 was a record year for ticket revenues for the live music business, of course, clustered in a very small group, right, of those 1%er type artists. But still, global ticket sales reached almost $9.5 billion, which was up 46% from 2022. So humongous leap because of, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, just those tours that have been happening.
Platinum tickets.
Yeah, right. So in terms of where that money goes, we all know that it's not going to any kind of equitable distribution, but the amount of dollars themselves being spent just on live music alone is almost mind-boggling to me.
Right. Now, what do you have thoughts on the Sphere with Fish? It was a madhouse. People were angry. Tickets are $1,000 if you want to be on the floor now.
Mm. It's really, it's such a strange time, I think. I've seen some friends of mine who are really active in the live music scene basically saying, don't give up. You know, if you want these tickets, just hang on, right? Don't let yourself be so disillusioned by whatever's happening. You'll get them. Okay, fine, I get that. And that's often the case if you're really diligent about it. But also, so many people just did not want to participate
Mm.
in that exercise of attempting to get tickets. And I'm wondering if ultimately there's going to be a divide for fans. And a lot of them, I'm kind of in that boat too. I just don't want to play that game,
Mm.
you know? And I also refuse to spend that kind of money. I can't do it.
Do you end up with the Mexico Sphere fan group, and then everyone else ends up at the festival in Dover, Delaware, in the heat for 4 days?
Well, that's it exactly. And, you know, we all have to make our choices. Now, one thing I'll mention, there was a survey as part of this Variety article, and they asked, you know, for future music festival attendance. So thinking just about festivals compared to 2023, do you anticipate your attendance at music festivals to increase, stay the same, or decrease? And 40% of respondents said that they expect that that will increase. About half of the people who responded said it's going to stay the same. And only about 10% said that they envision that decreasing.
Well,
So,
since I haven't been to a festival in 10 years, me going to Fish next year, I'm definitely increasing.
there you go. You're part of the 40%. Um, there's also something, and I just have to kind of read this quote verbatim because I actually stopped and paused. So, rising ticket prices, we talk about this all the time, the state of the economy. Would that pose a threat to the live music business? Analysts and experts are saying absolutely not. They've received a very high statistic on how willing people are to open credit cards for the purpose of purchasing concert or festival pre-sale tickets or just tickets in general.
It's the new college campus, huh?
Right? Yeah, right. And she said, I don't know if that's the best economic decision, but we are seeing these people are willing to splurge. They're going to do what they have to do to attend the show. Student loans are not. Ouch. I was like, okay, I didn't need to read that last little bit there. But I think maybe people after, you know, COVID, we're really kind of out of that time frame now. People want to have a good time. I mean, I see it. I feel it too. So perhaps there's just this air of, you know, fuck it. We want to go have a great time. We want to see the bands we want to see. And, you know, whatever we need to do to get there, we'll deal with it because that's the way it is.
All right. You got one shot. Take it.
That's right. Figure it out later. Try to get the lowest, you know, APR that you can.
There you go. All
Yeah.
right.
So there's just a couple pieces of information, and you know, we'll see what next year brings, but we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that.
All right. So, our interview this week, Steven Bernstein, he talks a little bit at the end about the state of the industry, playing live and things like that. This first clip is going to be about a band he has called the Millennial Territory Orchestra, and a band he has called Sex Mob, in which he plays the slide trumpet. So let's check that out, and we'll see you on the other side. Interesting. All right, let me ask you a question about you said you've been arranging your whole career.
Well, not my whole career, just 40 years.
Just 40 years. There you go. Do you feel like how you approach it has changed over the years?
Oh, yeah, I got better at it. I didn't know anything. And now I know a little bit. I mean, I literally just arranged by feel. I mean, I had, you know, I took one arranging class in college, but I taught myself to arrange. I taught myself to arrange by buying every record I could find
Right.
that had arrangements. In fact, this whole section here is all just arrangers' records. And
Okay.
and I just listened, and when I think arranging, I'm not just talking jazz arranging. I'm talking Sly and the Family Stone. Like, I consider Sly as one of my biggest arranging influences. But then guys like Billy May, who did, was a very like kind of a commercial arranger, but did all. He was a jazz arranger, but ended up in L.A. doing movies and TV and Sinatra, and so every of course, all the classic guys, the Brazilian arrangers. I mean, every arranger, and then Alan Toussaint, of course, a huge influence. I mean, every arranger influenced me. And the way, unlike people who study arranging, the way I made arrangements was I wrote an arrangement and I played it that night. I wrote an arrangement and recorded it that night, that day. So all my arrangements were actual arrangements played in front of people. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like, so that's how I learned to arrange, was having arrangements played in front of audiences. And that's a unique, that's kind of the old way arrangements were done back when they were live music in all the time with
Right.
arrangements.
And you also write your own stuff.
Yes, a lot of it.
What about your progression as a songwriter?
I'll tell you something. It's been very influenced by having played with Levon for so long and learning about songs. So, my original kind of influences were more along the line of Ornette Coleman and Duke Ellington. And then, Levon, playing all those songs with Levon really influenced me a lot. Yeah.
Right.
Years of songs,
Yeah.
And playing with
you.
Levon and playing with Larry Campbell and Jimmy Vivino, and having the experience of playing with those kind of musicians who I never had the opportunity to work with, who are like virtuoso musicians that aren't jazz musicians. They can play jazz, but they come from the rock and blues and rock and roll tradition. Rock and
Right.
roll, not really rock and roll and blues.
Right. Right. What else do you have going on now? Is Millennial Territory Orchestra around, or Spanish
Yeah.
Fly? Any of those other bands?
Everything's around. I'm playing this weekend with Millennial Territory Orchestra, and and then let's see what happens. My life is very much an open book. I have another grant to make another record, which I'm not ready to talk about yet, but it's all planned in my head. Completely different than anything I've ever done before. And I just want to keep working with MTO, and I want to, because we put these 4 records out, all this music hasn't, there's a lot of this music like this. I would, love to play. I thought I was done with the Hot 9, but having recorded the Hot 9 with Medeski and Arturo, I would like to, play this music again. I think the music even without because we didn't try to make it like the band with Henry when we made the record Manifesto of Henryisms. I told those guys, I said, look, Henry's not here. We're not a New Orleans band anymore.
Right.
We're playing this music, but now without Henry, like with Henry, it was a New Orleans band, in a sense, a New Orleans band with a New York kind of point of view.
Swagger. But
without Henry, it's now just us New Yorkers, playing this music. So I think there's so much music. There was a period 2 weeks ago where I think I had pulled out 9 different books of music in 11 days to be played.
Wow.
I had a lot of music.
Right.
We're talking about doing something, I made the record of Bond music, and I don't know if you know this, there's a big band record of that, Sex Mob Plays Bond. Probably most people don't know about it. But we're talking about doing a record. In fact, I got to make a note to call this guy back. Not a record, but a concert of like Afro Latin with Arturo Farrell's band. So like James Bond, Sex Mob does Bond played by Afro Latin big band with Arturo O'Farrell on organ. So it's almost like big Charlie Palmieri, like big band, congas, organ playing Bond. So,
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So you play a slide trumpet. Is this
Right.
correct? Now
Yes.
this is something that
I don't only play the slide
well,
trumpet.
right, you play, but sometimes it
Oh,
comes
well, in Sex Mob, I only play slide trumpet. In Sex
okay.
Mob, I only play slide trumpet. But yes, I
Right.
play the slide trumpet.
Right. Now this is not a famous instrument. You want to talk a little bit about how you came across it or started playing?
Wow, the story's been told so many times, but I will tell it. In 1977, I was at Creative Music Studio in Woodstock, and I went to a little. It seemed to me, as I remember it, a little guitar store that was hidden in the woods, and there's a slide trumpet on the wall. I said, "What's that?" And the guy says, "It's a slide trumpet." I said, "Oh, that's cool. How much is it?" The guy says, $25. So it was new. I said, I'll take it. So I bought it, started messing around with it. When I moved to New York, I had it with me. When I started playing in bands, I would like play it on a song or two. When we started Spanish Fly, I would use it on a couple songs in Spanish Fly, and people always really reacted to it. I never really practiced it. I had a couple natural things I could do on it. And my friend Dave Douglas, the great trumpeter and composer, after one show in Europe, we're young and it's like I think it's our first tours of Europe as leaders, and we're hanging out drinking beer after the show. And he goes, "Steven, why don't you practice that thing?" I said, "Wow, that's a good idea." So I started practicing it. That led me to say, what if I started a band where I only bring a slide trumpet? Like I don't even have a trumpet with me. It's going to force me. And that's how I started Sex Mob. And we started Sex Mob at the Knitting Factory. I couldn't even make it through two sets. I mean, by the second set, it was sputtering. Like it was like no notes were even coming out. Like I couldn't even play the instrument well enough to make it through two sets of music. So I basically created a language that didn't exist before on this instrument.
Right.
An
Now,
instrument that doesn't really exist.
right. Was it a novelty instrument there that somebody thought was going to be huge at one time or
I've done a bunch of research on it. The best I can tell, because everyone made them. Like I have 15 of them, probably.
oh, okay.
I mean, I only play one of them, but I
Right.
tried to collect them all, and I realized, I said, why would every major instrument manufacturer make an instrument that doesn't exist? Like, because they were like these instrument companies, right? And they're making. Why would you make an instrument? And the best I can tell, and I talk to older musicians. They say, "Oh, so and so used to play one on a piece in this band," and "Oh, yes, so and so used to do this number where he'd play this." But that's still not enough reason that in 1920 you have all these instruments from the 20s and stuff. And there's pictures of Louis Armstrong and there's pictures of Freddie Kepler holding one. The best I can tell is that when they had vaudevilles and circuses and had little bands, it was a vaudeville instrument.
Okay.
Saxophone started as a vaudeville instrument. Saxophone started in the United States to make chicken sounds with the little circus and vaudeville bands. It
Oh.
wasn't considered a real instrument in the 20s. It was
Oh.
like it was a novelty instrument.
That's fascinating.
And I think the slide trumpet must have been a novelty instrument. So like, at a certain point, the guy stands up and he's got the little slide trumpet and everyone laughs and claps.
Kevin, I'm excited to get back into the interview with Steven, but before we do that, let's just take a quick pause to remind everyone that we are on all the social media platforms at All That Jam Pod, and then allthatjampod.com, of course, and YouTube. Never want to forget about YouTube. I feel like that is, I think, a really cool thing that you've been doing, uploading full interviews, and that continues to grow. But really, we would love for everybody out there, if you haven't already, find us, subscribe, click the like button, take a listen, especially the clips that we're posting that are, a couple minutes long. They're perfect bite size, nuggets for you to listen to during the day, even while you're working. And so really want to thank everyone who's done that. Kevin, do you want to talk a little bit about what's coming up this week?
Yeah, we have some great stuff. Tomorrow we have Peter Martin. He is a piano player, a keyboardist. I guess he's a piano player. He has a band called Generation S. So we're going to find out a little bit about that. On Wednesday, Midnight North, Graham Lesch's band. We have Graham and a couple of the other people from the band on. Thursday is New Year's, new studio and more with Vinny from Mel. Friday, Jesse Miller from Lotus about how he approaches Octave Cat and the differences between Lotus. Saturday, we have Isaac Hayden, the guitar prodigy, about the Isaac Hayden organ trio. And then on Sunday, we got Eric Gould, who was in Particle at one time, Pink Talking Fish, about Marble Eyes and how they got their start.
Awesome, Kevin. Let's get back into this chat with Steven. We're going to hear from him on a number of topics, one of them being New York and what the city is like for musicians, what the feel is there in terms of music industry, some lessons that he's learned from being on the road, and then some other things like work with Little Feat and the Ramble Band. So let's get back into that.
Okay. So you said that you told the band Henry's not with us. We're no longer a New Orleans band. How does New York inform what you do living in New York?
Well, just listen to my music. You hear everything. You hear jazz. You hear punk. You hear Latin music. You hear folk music. You hear free music. You hear every kind of rhythm you can imagine. You hear Dominican rhythm. You hear Puerto Rican rhythm. You hear Cuban rhythm. You hear African rhythm. New York is the great. You hear Haitian rhythm. You hear, because I've done all those gigs in my life. I did Haitian bands. I did Dominican bands. I did Cuban bands. I did Puerto Rican bands. I did, and all that. That's what New York does for you. It gives you the opportunity to be in these worlds. I mean, I used to do calypso bands. I used to every kind of band. I did Jewish bands. We didn't talk about Diaspora Soul, but you did every kind of band, and that's the New York experience. Is that we all live. I mean, I don't live in the city anymore, but I did for 20 years. Everyone's living on this. When you live on Manhattan, you're living on a little island with all these people. Everyone taking the subway together.
Is Diaspora Soul still around? Does that still exist?
Everything's still around if someone wants to call me for a job.
Okay. Fair enough.
If you have a job, I will, I'm ready.
More than happy to show up.
Exactly.
I hear you. Okay, so you've been on and off the road for many, many years.
Many decades, not many years, man.
Right. Many decades.
Yes.
All right, we'll go with it. Many decades. What has it taught you? What's the wisdom you've gleaned from the life that you've lived on the road?
Enjoy every moment. Take care of yourself. And that the music comes first. The important thing is you got to be strong and get up there on stage and play. And I mean, I just got off the road last year. I was with Little Feat for, not the most of the year, but a good portion of the year. And listen, man, there's guys in that band there's a guy in the band in the 80s, in his 80s. Right. And the other guys are in their 70s. And they're all playing music. And there's no guarantee in this life for anything, but because basically you're here and then you're not here. But while you're here, take care of yourself and love every moment and play as much music as you can and play that music with every ounce of truth you have. That's what's taught me.
There you go.
Do not waste an opportunity to play music. Like every note you play, you give it every note you play, you give it every ounce of spirit you can.
There you go. Did you do the arrangement for Little Feat?
Some of them. Jay Collins, between me and Jay Collins, who's we have 3 horn players in the Ramble Band, Eric Lawrence and Jay Collins and myself. And between we wrote those arrangements.
Right. We had Scott Sherrard on a few months back.
Right.
Great guy. He's
amazing musician.
The funniest thing is after we talked to him forever, he's like, "Oh yeah, and I do Walker Texas Ranger. I do the music for that too."
Yeah.
I just throw that on, on the end there. Oh, that's fantastic. So is there anything else you want to hit on? Anything that you have coming up for the summer that you want to?
I mean, that's it for the summer is Sex Mom with Laurie Anderson. That's the big deal. And then actually most of my summer is a bit unknown, and that's kind of okay with me.
Is there anybody off the top of your head that you'd want to work with that you haven't?
Well, there's someone I'm working with on Monday, but I had to sign an NDA, so I can't talk about it yet.
Right.
But and it's not like I want to work with him so much because it's just like I know him. It's just I've never worked with him, and it's not like it's changed my life. It's just he's a guy that I really admire his music. But I basically play with, like, that's all happened already. Like, listen, I played with all my heroes. I played with Levon. Not just played, I recorded and went on the road with Levon Helm, Roswell Rudd, Sam Rivers, and Bernie Worrell. Those are my four biggest heroes. And I made records and toured with all four of those guys.
Right.
And so at this point, and Henry Butler, so five, right? Now after that, I got, like, that's it. Like, there's no one. I'm just want to do my thing, man. At this point, it's up. When people started passing away, Hal Wilner said to me, as we're losing our heroes, it's up to us to create art with the same intent as our heroes. Listen, man, I've worked with, I didn't do a whole lot of films, but I worked with Robert Altman and Woody Allen. I haven't done a whole lot of, of choreography, music being, working with choreographers, but I worked with Twyla Tharp and the Alvin Ailey Theater and San Francisco Ballet. I've got to do, with John Lurie and the Lounge Lizards. I mean, not only we do every amazing kind of festival you could do, I've done everything, man. I got Grammys and I did TV shows. You got, like, I don't know what this was called, like some kind of award for, like, animated TV show. We did the Backyardigans, and I underscored the Backyardigans that, like, won some Annie or something. Like, I've done all the stuff. Like, I won Downbeat Awards. I got articles and every stuff. Like, that's done. I did all that. Like I said, over 600 records, like, with everybody. Like, Bill Laswell is a hero of mine. I love those Bill Laswell records. I worked with him for years. I've done all that stuff. The stuff's been done. Now it's just like, make every moment count, play as much music as possible.
Right. Cool. Where do you see the music industry going? I mean, it's not like it was when you were coming up.
No. But it seems to be, I don't really know the answer to that. All I know is that people keep touring, people keep putting together bands, people keep making records. I always tell students, I say, look, people told me I wouldn't be able to make a living playing. My teachers told me, like, it's going to be tough out there. And I did not make a living the way they made a living, but I raised a family and I did all this stuff, and I did it in a completely different way than they did. And whoever does it the next generation after me is going to have to figure out their own way to do it.
Right.
There's certainly great musicians out there doing great things, and that's going to continue to happen.
Right. When my oldest went into kindergarten, they made us watch this video, and the video said, the job that your kid is going to do when they grow up doesn't exist right now.
Right. Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, that's true. And she's 19 now. And it's in the past 20 years, it's been a lot of changes,
a lot of changes, man.
It's fantastic. It was, this was an interview that I wasn't on my radar until we started talking to Kevin from Royal Potato, and these releases are on Royal Potato. He was like, I think you'll really like this. Kevin has been so great with throwing us, lines and saying, are you interested in this band? And just opening all kinds of new doors for us. So we were thinking, what new doors opened for you this year? And Amanda, we got a little something we're going to be trying to do for the next week or so on socials.
Yeah, as I was saying to you, Kevin, there's always a little bit of angst out there for people wanting to share things like their Spotify Wrapped. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's a lot of opinions about it. That's great. It's data and it's numbers. People love to read about themselves. And I get it. I look at mine. However, I saw on the New York Times in their music section, they were asking people, artists especially, what their song of the year was. And it could have been a song that artist created or something else. So this is much more qualitative, right? It's about a feeling. What song for you may have defined all or part of the year? And I do feel like that's a thing. Sometimes, I know I felt this way, I'll listen to a song and it immediately takes me back to a certain time period. So I think it's a really interesting thing to think about. So we're going to be asking everybody out there, including, I think, Kevin, artists that we've had on the show, if they want to take a second and think about a song that for them really has meaning from 2023, and hopefully we'll get some responses and maybe even some details about why that song is so important.
There you go. We next week's episode will be on Christmas, so we will be recording it the day before, and we're going to take a look ahead at New Year's. Also, I want you all to remember that if you're feeling down, this is like a tough time of year, reach out to someone, please. We want you here. We want you out there listening. We want you reaching out to us. So make sure that you do that. And with that, we're going to say, stay beautiful, but don't stay underground too long. I'll see you next week, Amanda.
Thanks, Kevin.